This is the agenda for tonight's session on Vote Builder 103, Building Canvases. We'll have a real quick canvassing refresher, talk about creating your canvas list, how to cut turf, how to get that information from Vote Builder to miniVAN, and we'll share some additional resources. So for the refresher, I'm actually going to ask this group if you want to type in the chat or raise your Zoom hand, why do we canvas? And a little hint here, the answer is the same as what I share with volunteers who are knocking doors for the first time, and also some additional benefits for you as an administrator. Why do we canvas? GOTV. Yeah, when we are going out to get out the vote. Yes. Personally reach out to dinner. Sorry, I'm reading two comments at the same time. Personally reach out to voters, increases voter turnout. Yeah. So for this group, if you are an administrator, what I think about is canvassing for three purposes. Identifying supporters. So you might canvass to identify who supports your campaign, your candidate, the Democratic Party, or potentially to find volunteers, depending on the density of the community you're in, to persuade people for our candidates and campaigns, and to get out the vote. So when we talk about universes, that's one of the terms, some of the jargon that we use when we talk about a group of people. The jargon is it's a universe. There is a mobilization universe, there's a persuasion universe that lines up with these three categories. Also, then for you as data administrators, for us as the state party, we know that a big benefit of this is also the data cleanup. That as we're canvassing, we're constantly improving the quality of our data so that as we get closer and closer to election day, we're more able to effectively and efficiently target the people it's most important for us to talk to. These are my standard tips on working with Vote Builder. I mentioned that it's a very powerful tool. When I was learning it for the first time, I did not personally find it intuitive or really easy to pick up. So I know that this is what it took for me to learn Vote Builder: patience, practice, and experimentation. It takes more than an hour to learn. I've been using Votebuilder for like 6 years now. I don't know, Sarah and Harmon, probably the same, maybe longer. And we learn new things all the time. I know that the more I use it, the easier it gets, the faster it gets. There are some tasks I do multiple times a week and I can do them bing, bang, boom. When I'm doing something new, it takes me longer and I need to figure it out and practice it a few times before it gets fast and easy for me. Sarah and I had a conversation about this third point today. There's more than one way to do things. I was doing something one way, Sarah had a more efficient way. I'm going to show you the way we're recommending doing it. There might be other ways to accomplish the same goal in Vote Builder. And finally, experiment. You really can't break Vote Builder. So I've learned a lot of things just by trying stuff out, using logic, gut check, and just experimenting. That said, I don't want you to bang your head up against a wall for too awful long. If you can't figure something out you're trying to do, reach out to us, attend our office hours, things like that, and we will help you. Those were some canvassing basics for this audience. Before I talk about specifically how you would create a list in Vote Builder for your canvas, what questions do you have? If you want to type something in the chat or come off mute. I don't see any typing faces, so I'm going to move on and talk about creating your list. So if you are comfortable using multiple screens at one time, this might be the time to log into Vote Builder. Or if people are watching this video later or you're looking at the slides while you use Vote Builder, this is your cue to log in. And of course, votebuilder.com, I have it bookmarked. I'm in there all day, every day. I do see a question in the comment, will we be covering script building? So that is a different session. And scripts is coming up later this month, July 22nd. So I'll share the full schedule when we get towards the end. Okay, so building your contact list. These are very similar to the steps that I shared in Vote Builder 101, that I shared in Vote Builder 102 on building a phone bank, but there are some nuances. So, step one is to create a list of people that you're targeting, whatever criteria is relevant for you. First off, you're deciding if you're in my voters or my campaigns. My voter is the voter role, my campaign is your volunteer universe. When you're building a canvas, you are far more likely to be working in my voters. I think it's possible, but unusual to be doing a lot of canvassing in my campaigns to your volunteers. So, and if Sarah or Harmon disagrees with that, holler. But I think you're really most likely to be in my voters. So, Sarah thinks it's impossible. Yeah, it's very unlikely to be canvassing from my campaigns. So I'm going to walk through a list that I created this afternoon. So I've got a red arrow here to the left side navigation where it says create a list. And then in the middle of the screen, it's showing you how you're going to create that list, create a new search. I have three sets of criteria with a star by them, so they're popping up to the top of the list because this is what I think you're probably most likely to use to build this list. So I'm using home district. I looked my county and then my precinct, scores, which I'll talk about in a moment, and then canvas status. And I think we'll have time to get through the slides and then I can do a live demonstration. When it comes to pulling the people that you want to talk to, couple of recommendations here or starting points as you're pulling these lists. If anybody was using Vote Builder with us last year, we had models built for you that were kind of a shortcut for you to target people. Right now, what you will be doing is selecting your the scores of the people you want to talk to. So score is a likelihood from 0 to 100 that someone, in this case, is likely to turn out to vote, likely to have supported Kamala Harris in 2024. A couple of places for you to think about as a starting point, and you might adjust this based on your community and your strategic goals. This is probably the time in the cycle right now. Here we are in July, where you might be having conversations with independent voters, Democratic leaning, but people who aren't maybe our very strongest base voters as Democrats. We would call that a persuasion universe. So these are undecided voters, unaffiliated voters, squishy Democrats, perhaps. And what we would recommend if you're having these persuasion conversations, you're talking to people to say, who are you likely to vote for in your municipal elections? Or are you likely to vote for the Democratic candidate or the Republican candidate for Senate in 2026? In that case, the recommendation, and I've got a red box here around the turnout score. In this case, if you're having a persuasion conversation, maybe you target 70% likely to turn out, up to 100% likely to turn out. And then the Democratic support score would be a 40 to a 70 support score. Mobilization, that's our get out the vote. So when it gets to be October, maybe late September, you're going to start working to mobilize the people who you've already identified as supporters to make sure they cast their ballot. That then is a 70 to 100 support score, 30 to 70 turnout score. The concept here around scores is very wonky, super jargony, in the weeds. What I would say as a baseline is if you're talking to people who you don't know if they support Democrats, use the persuasion universe. When it gets later in the cycle and it's time to get out the vote, that's when you would use the mobilization universe. And you can absolutely just use these numbers I have on the screen in those boxes. Sarah, Harmon, anything to add on that? Sarah's giving me thumbs up. Okay. So I selected my precinct. I'm going to do a persuasion canvas. So I used those Dem support and turnout scores. What's different now with a canvas is that I want to remove anybody who has been contacted recently so that we're being more efficient. So we're not duplicating our work, so that we don't knock on a door and it's somebody that we phone banked last week. So narrowing your list. So what you would do as you're building your list, I've got a red arrow here where it says add step, and I'm going to add step narrow people. And then in the canvas status section, I want to exclude. And as soon as you select exclude, it's going to check a bunch of those boxes for you. I encourage you to double check those boxes because some of them can be unchecked. So as a standard, if somebody says do not email or do not text me, it shows up on this exclusion list. I'm knocking doors. This is the opportunity to talk to people who don't want to be texted or called. Most of these, which what we're really going for here is anybody we've canvassed, anybody we've had a conversation with. The jargon term canvassed in this context means we've knocked on the door and talked to them, we've called them on the phone or talked to them, we've texted and talked to them. Doesn't just mean knocking on the doors. Any conversation we've had with them is included in that bucket. Then I encourage you to think about what time frame were people canvassed, spoken to, that you want to eliminate. So in this example, I pulled my precinct and my list started with 364 people. It is several months until November. So I put the date canvassed this year. If anybody we've already canvassed them, we've already talked to them this year, I'm going to take them out. Because it's 6 months, 5 months from the election, that only removed 4 people. As you go along in the election cycle, you're going to want to change that date range. So, for example, as a precinct leader, I have a goal of talking to these people between now and Labor Day. Come Labor Day, I have another goal from Labor Day to Election Day. So, when it gets to be Labor Day, I'm going to change this date range. Think about what is a date range that makes sense for you. The closer you get to election day, you might want to talk to people you just talked to 2 weeks ago, especially if people can early vote. So if it's a period where people can vote and you know they're a supporter and they haven't yet voted, those are the people in the last week or two we contact a lot until we find out that they have in fact voted. So just think about the date range that makes sense for what you're trying to accomplish, and then hit run search. I have my contact list now. So you can see in this example, I've got 360 people at 296 doors. Similar to how we've done in Vote Builder 101 and 102, save that list. You can save it as a list or save it as a search. The Vote Builder 101 talked about the differences there. I'm going to use saved list in this example. So that's the process I'm going through here. I'm going to save my list. I have a folder. I'm indicating what folder to save it to, and I'm naming my contact list. I always recommend that you consider using a naming convention so that uh, if there are multiple people in your county using Votebuilder, if you're using it year after year, if you have a naming convention, it's easier for things to make sense to all the people who might be looking at it. So I always put year, geography, purpose. This was 2025, Holly Springs 0605 Persuasion. That is how I named this contact list. Okay, that's the recommended process for building a list for canvassing. What's different is really narrowing when was the last time people were spoken to. But before I move on to cutting turf, what questions do you have? Or Sarah Harmon, did I leave anything out? Okay, let's keep going. We've made our contact list in Vote Builder. Now, to turn that into a canvas where volunteers can show up, can knock on doors, have conversations, we need to cut that list into turf. Turf is the assigned area or list that any individual volunteer will be responsible for. So, this is the process of dividing a list of doors into map regions for canvassing purposes. The turf cutter tool I'm going to walk through and demonstrate here in a little bit. Basically, we're gonna do an art project. We're gonna draw some boxes around groups of houses. So I've made my list. This is the 360 people at 296 doors. I have a red arrow pointing to the icon that says cut turf. I know that's a little small on the screen, but when you get the slides tomorrow, hopefully that'll be a bit more clear. The button literally says cut turf. And when I click that button, this is the image that it pulls up. This is a map showing all 296 doors in this geographic information area that we're going to cut the turf and build a canvas from it. Step one, zoom in. That just looks like a blob of blobs. So zoom in to the degree you need so that you can see it adequately. And when we get through the slides, I'll demonstrate this live as well. What you do now is using your knowledge of the area, your ability to read a map, we are going to click to group doors together. So in this case, in my precinct, I've just clicked around the black dots, and then I'm going to close the group. That means I go back and click on the first square again. So what I've done is indicate which houses are going to be in a turf. So this is, I don't know, about 20 houses, which is about right for a canvas turf. And you will continue doing that until all of those black dots have turned green or turned a color, meaning that they are in a turf. I'll show you this live in 15 minutes, I promise. So you can also drag your little boxes around to make adjustments as you go until your groupings make sense. And then you repeat until done. Repeat closing the box. Okay. It'll make a bit more sense when I show you live or when you're doing it yourself. But every one of those white squares is the spot where I clicked. As I was doing this, the black circles, which represent a door, turned yellow in this case, so I can see what's included in that turf. And then in the far left corner, that was the first box I clicked. And then I went down, 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 over, 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 up, up, up. And then I want to click on that first box again. And that is what closes the group. Okay, I'll show you that live in a couple of minutes. There is another technique where the computer will try to read your mind and cut turf for you. And oop, we recommend that you cut your turf manually rather than using this magic technique because the computer is not as smart as you. So if you use this automated technique, sometimes the number of doors in a turf is weird. Sometimes it will have a couple of random houses that are on the other side of the highway, across the river. There might be things that the computer can't interpret. And if the computer doesn't catch them, you probably would when you were drawing it manually. If you don't catch it, then volunteers are going to come back and say, "Why'd you give me those two houses that were clear on the other side of the railroad tracks? I don't have a car. I had to, I don't know, climb over the railroad tracks." So that's why we're recommending that you cut your turf manually. I'm going to share information here at the end too to let you know that Harmon is doing some sessions where you can get practice cutting turf with a real live professional with you. Sarah, go ahead.
I just want to jump in because the person who taught me all the things I know about cutting turf made it clear that the best thing we can do when we're creating turf is think about how you would walk it, right? Where do the roads connect? Does it make sense? Like if you have a cul-de-sac, are you doing the whole cul-de-sac or are you doing like just the first part of it and then giving somebody else the second part? That would not be ideal. So you kind of want to like think about what the experience is going to be like for the person. It drove me crazy when I was doing coordinated turfs last year. Don't tell them. They would do like half a street and then the other half of the street. So instead of doing both sides of one street, I would be going from one block to another. So think about what it's like for the person walking, and then your canvassers will be very, very happy and they will come back and do more canvases with you.
Yes. Um, okay, I've cut all my turf. And now I'm going to save it, save my map region. Again, I'm putting it in the folder that I'm know I'll be able to find it in the future. I'm naming it using a naming convention. There's also the description box. I encourage you to use the description box. I use a lot of abbreviations in my naming convention, so I try to explain it a little bit more in the description. This is so if Sarah has to pick up for me because I get sick for 3 weeks, she can read my mind and know what I was trying to accomplish. Okay, turf cutting. I did see a question in the chat. Can you edit the automated turf? You can, and as Sarah says, it might end up just being as much work as if you manually cut your turf from the first place. And Sarah is a good turf cutter, so I take her recommendation. All right, let's get our turfs to miniVAN, and then I'll do a live demo. We love miniVAN, right? Are we all persuaded on miniVAN? I've heard from a lot. I saw a clap. Nice. You know, it can be difficult when people first make the transition from doing paper canvassing to miniVAN. And once you get the hang of it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. I don't have to do data entry. miniVAN's great. Here's how you're going to prep the turfs you just cut for miniVAN. So I'm in Votebuilder. I'm going to go to the My Turfs section on the navigation. I've got a red arrow pointing to that. And it's bringing up the list of all of my turfs. I know that's real small to read, but I'm selecting the turf that I'm currently working with. There's a box when I click it, it selects every turf in it. And then on the drop-down menu, I'm going to print for miniVAN. It'll bring up this screen. miniVAN campaign that I'm using in this case is P100. That's the Project 100 campaigns that if you're canvassing with the state party, that's probably what you're working on. The report format, and we work today to cascade this report format to people's vote builders, or we're in the process of doing it. But this is the report format. Sarah gave me a thumbs up, so it's done. The report format that we recommend. It is 2025 NC generic walk, no script. And it starts with an exclamation, which I think is probably forcing it to the top of your list. So that's the report format that we recommend. Contacted how, I select walk. I'm giving it a title. And then when you scroll down to the bottom, you hit the print button. Once the computer does its thing, you'll get an alert. So you can see here, I've got the little bell icon and I got two things there. This is in the upper right-hand corner. Depending on the size of your canvas, how many doors are in it, I did this turf packet that had 300 doors and it took, I don't know, 45 seconds for this to be ready. If your turf packet is like 10,000 doors, I don't know, it takes 3 minutes, 5 minutes. So depending on the size is how long it will take to show up. Um, okay, so I get that alert. So I'm going to click on my bell and it brings up the list here where I can see I just generated this 2025 Holly Springs 0605 Persuasion. And then when I click on download file, here we go. This is what I wanted to show. It's bringing up my turf packet. So this is what you would use when you have an event so that volunteers can sign out their turf. So you'll see on the far left, I know it's small, but on the far left, it has the list number. This is the number your volunteers put into miniVAN. It has a turf number, how many people, how many doors, and then it has fields so that you can put your canvasser's name and phone number. You can also potentially put what time they leave with the list and what time they come back. That is important just for making sure people haven't gotten lost. People have knocked their doors. If you see that somebody took out a list 2.5 hours ago and they haven't come back in yet, I'm going to pick up the phone and call them and ask and make sure they're okay. So that will give you your turf packet. I've got just a couple more slides with some more resources, and then we're going to do a live demo and I'll take a look at the chat. Uh, okay, the Living Library, these resources, by the way, I will share all of these tomorrow in the follow-up email. But the Living Library is a shared drive that the state party created, I don't know, several years ago, before our time. And there is a Vote Builder folder that includes links to all of the training slide decks. So I want you to have access to that. The Vote Builder guide is really the user guide. And what I recommend you do with that, I mean, bookmark it so you have it handy. And then if you're ever trying to figure something out, you can search for key terms in this PDF. I don't know what it is, 50 pages or 75 pages, but you can search for key terms to find the information that you're looking for. A non-vote builder resource that I do always like to share. Oops. Is anybody get the content package? If you are not getting, I see some hands. Good. The content package is a weekly email that the North Carolina Democratic Party sends. It's built by our communications and digital teams. And if you've ever thought, like, I wish I knew what the talking points are, why aren't Democrats as good at message consistency or whatever? Subscribe to the content package. So it will let you know what we consider the top messages and topics politically in North Carolina at that time. And importantly, if you are a county party leader or a precinct leader, especially my third vice chair here, if you're the comms director, there's material in that email that you can just take and post from your social media accounts. So the graphics are sized, they're professional looking. I see a heart, Zena. They're professional looking. We provide captions and alt image descriptions. It's sized for Facebook, Twitter, I don't know, Instagram, whatever. It's a really great resource. This is the full schedule of the Vote Builder training session. So somebody earlier was asking about scripts. We'll be covering scripts on July 22nd, or again, September 2nd. I'm doing each of these sessions twice. I'm recording each one. We'll post it on YouTube. Takes me about 24 hours or so. And I will include all these links in the follow-up email tomorrow as well, so you can attend whichever sessions are going to be helpful for you. The last resource I'm going to share here is Harmon has offered to have practice and review sessions. So you can see the schedule here every other Wednesday at 6:30. The next one is a week and a day from now. Um, I've included the Google Doc where you can sign up and indicate the kind of help you want. But if you want practice turf cutting or pulling lists, practicing these skills after the training, those sessions will be helpful for you. Now, let me get caught up on the chat here, and then I'll start doing a live demonstration. Um, create campaigns. Okay. And I think Sarah answered, is there a recommended miniVAN campaign or campaign format? Depends on what you're doing. Yeah. Those are things that maybe your regional organizing director can help you out with, or Harmon at some of those sessions. So I'm going to stop the recording because I'm going to start sharing some personal information here.